She threw the ID like trash, but it was a $2 billion mistake. The room went quiet. Everyone in line turned to look. The bank teller had just tossed the ID of a well-dressed black woman onto the floor like it was garbage. The woman didn't say a word. She bent down, picked up her ID, and walked out silently. 2 weeks later, the bank lost a $2 billion partnership, and they had no idea why. But the woman did. She was the CEO of a global fintech company. And that day, she chose silence over scandal. Let's dive into the full story. Her name was Camille Rivers. To many, the name alone didn't ring a bell, yet. But in the world of fintech, Camille was a powerhouse. She had built her company from scratch in her mid-20s, transforming a small payment solution startup into a billion-dollar enterprise serving clients across 5 continents. Her firm handled over $30 billion in transactions annually, partnering with major retailers, nonprofits, and even government agencies. She was recently featured in Forbes 40 Under 40, hailed as a tech visionary with a heart for community impact. But that morning, Camille wasn't in a boardroom or on a stage. She was standing in line at a bank branch like any other customer. Dressed in comfortable sneakers, wearing a simple black jumpsuit, and carrying a no-brand canvas tote, Camille didn't exactly scream CEO. Her natural curls were pulled up into a neat bun. No makeup, no jewelry, just clarity of purpose. She had come to open a trust account, not for herself, but for a youth entrepreneurship initiative she was quietly launching. The program was designed to provide seed funding, mentorship, and legal resources for underprivileged teens looking to start businesses. It was a personal project, rooted in her own story of struggle, hustle, and self-belief. She didn't send an assistant, didn't call ahead. She believed in showing up. To her, leadership was hands-on, humble, direct. The branch she entered belonged to one of the top national banking chains, known for its high-net-worth services, global reach, and polished reputation. Camille's company had worked with their corporate division before, and she expected the same level of professionalism at the branch level. But what she found was something entirely different. As she stepped up to the counter, the energy shifted. The teller glanced at her ID, then at Camille, her eyes narrowing with casual suspicion. There was no warmth. No, how can I help you today? Just silence, and then skepticism. Camille had felt this kind of tension before. It was the same energy she'd felt walking into tech boardrooms where she was assumed to be someone's assistant. The same look she'd received from investors who smiled politely but ignored her ideas until they saw the profit reports. But she had hoped, foolishly maybe, that in a bank, a place of professionalism, she would be treated with the dignity her role deserved, or at least the basic courtesy any customer should receive. She was wrong. And in that moment, Camille felt something deeper than disrespect. She felt erased. Not as a CEO, not even as a customer, but as a human being. And still, she remained calm, graceful, focused. Because Camille Rivers didn't just carry money. She carried power. And power, as the bank was about to learn, doesn't always wear a suit or raise its voice. Sometimes it wears sneakers and simply walks out the door. Camille approached the counter with calm confidence. She offered the teller a warm, polite smile, the kind that says, "I'm here on business, but I believe in kindness first." "Hi," Camille began. "I'd like to open a new trust account today." She placed her identification and legal documents neatly on the counter. The teller, a young woman in her early 20s, didn't return the smile. Her body language was stiff, her tone sharp even before she spoke. She glanced up briefly, then down at the papers, frowning. "You sure this is all yours?" she asked, her voice laced with doubt. Camille paused, caught off guard, but only slightly. There was no confusion in her documents. Everything was in perfect order. Her name, photo ID, corporate paperwork. Everything matched. "Yes, ma'am," she replied evenly, still composed. "I'm the founder of the trust, and these are my legal documents. My ID is valid." The teller didn't respond. She picked up Camille's government-issued ID, inspected it with exaggerated scrutiny, then let out a soft scoff, barely audible but heavy with meaning. And then it happened. With a flick of the wrist and a dismissive grunt, the teller tossed Camille's ID onto the floor, letting it land on the cold, sterile tiles between them. "There, pick it up," she said. I'm not playing games. The sound of the ID hitting the ground was small, but the silence that followed was massive. The lobby stilled. A man filling out a deposit slip looked up. A mother holding a toddler froze. Even the security guard near the door glanced sideways, unsure whether to intervene. Camille stood motionless for a moment. She wasn't shocked by the disrespect. She had seen it before, lived it before, in subtle forms. But what stunned her was the boldness of it, the public nature, the carelessness of someone in uniform treating another person, another woman, like that, without hesitation or fear of consequence. But Camille didn't raise her voice, didn't demand to speak to the manager, didn't tell the teller she was on Forbes' list or that her company had helped fund education programs across 3 states. No. She bent down slowly, picked up her ID, brushed off an invisible speck of dust, and stood back up with her posture tall and her expression unreadable. She looked the teller in the eye, not with anger, but with a silence that spoke volumes. Then she said 4 simple words. Thank you for your time. No shouting, no insult, no scene. She turned and walked out. But every step out that door was a choice. A choice not to educate, not to retaliate, not in that moment. Because Camille understood something deeper than ego. She knew who she was. She knew what she carried. And she knew the kind of power that doesn't react, but recalibrates. Behind her quiet exit, a storm was quietly brewing. Not out of revenge, but from the kind of dignity no one can strip away. What the teller didn't know, what the branch manager didn't even imagine, was that Camille Rivers wasn't just another walk-in customer. She was, in fact, in the final stages of a $2 billion strategic deal with that very bank's corporate division. For months, Camille's fintech company had been evaluating proposals from 3 major financial institutions. All 3 banks were competing to win her firm's global fund management, an elite opportunity that came with prestige, massive liquidity, and long-term returns. The bank she visited that day? They weren't just a contender. They were the front-runner. They had impressed Camille's executive team with their global infrastructure, digital integrations, and competitive rates. Their pitch deck promised world-class service and an unwavering commitment to clients of every background. They even boasted about their diversity programs. But none of that mattered anymore. Because one frontline employee, one moment of unchecked bias, had revealed something deeper than policy ever could. Culture. Camille didn't storm out and call the bank's VP in a rage. She didn't make a viral tweet or hold a press conference. That wasn't her style. Instead, she did something far more powerful. She went back to her office, called her legal and finance teams into a private meeting, and said 6 simple words. We're moving on. Cancel the deal. There was silence in the room. Her team knew how close they were to finalizing things. Contracts had been drafted. Integration plans were underway. A joint announcement was scheduled for the following month. But Camille was resolute. She drafted a short, clear email to the bank's corporate representative. No explanation. No complaints. No drama. Just this. After consideration, we've decided to move in another direction. Thank you for your time. And just like that, the $2 billion deal was gone. No warning. No second chances. The funds were quickly reallocated to one of the competing banks, a firm that had quietly built a reputation for inclusive hiring, cultural sensitivity training, and treating every client, regardless of appearance, with dignity. Camille didn't seek revenge. She chose accountability without confrontation. And her silence? It echoed louder than any press release. At first, the bank's corporate team was baffled. The relationship had seemed solid. There were no red flags, until the abrupt withdrawal. Internal emails flew back and forth. Some suspected compliance issues. Others guessed Camille's team had found better terms elsewhere. But then, quietly, a story reached their ears. Someone at the local branch had witnessed it. Word spread. Eventually, someone at headquarters pieced it together. The woman whose ID was tossed on the floor? She was the CEO. The very CEO they had courted for months. The one who could have made them heroes at the next board meeting. Instead, they became a cautionary tale. Because sometimes, it's not your pitch that loses the deal. It's how you treat people when you think they're nobody. Inside the bank's executive offices, confusion spread like wildfire. Camille's email was short, polite, and professional, but carried the weight of a bombshell. After consideration, we've decided to move in another direction. Thank you for your time. No one could believe it. The $2 billion partnership had been all but finalized. Legal teams had exchanged drafts. Financial models were approved. The deal had been featured in internal memos, even whispered about as a flagship win for the next shareholder report. And now? It was gone. Senior VPs huddled in meetings behind glass doors, trying to make sense of the sudden reversal. Was it compliance? Did a competitor undercut our offer? Was there a breach on our side? No one had any answers. Not even Camille's corporate liaison could get her on the phone. They retraced every step, reviewed emails, meeting notes, offer terms. Everything had gone smoothly. Until it didn't. It wasn't until 3 weeks later that a junior associate, someone buried deep in operations, overheard a conversation between two tellers during lunch break at a regional training seminar. Apparently, a woman had come into a downtown branch, well-dressed but casual, had asked to open a trust account, handed over her ID and documents. And the teller? She'd tossed the woman's ID on the floor. Didn't look like a CEO, one of them said. The associate froze. He knew Camille's name. He'd been looped in on the final proposal call, and he remembered hearing that she had visited a branch unannounced a few weeks back to handle some trust-related matters. Suddenly, the dots started to connect. The woman, the ID, the floor, the CEO. The associate quietly pulled up Camille's LinkedIn profile, then checked the internal visit logs from the branch that day. Her name was right there. His stomach dropped. Word made its way back to senior leadership within hours. A flurry of emails followed. Emergency calls, crisis PR meetings. The regional manager was summoned. The branch manager was questioned. The teller? She was quietly let go, but not for the reason she imagined. On paper, it was recorded as a violation of professional conduct. In reality, no one wanted the story to reach the press. A single disrespectful moment had cost the bank not only $2 billion in business, but untold reputation damage behind closed doors. And Camille? She never replied to the apology emails, never returned the calls, never mentioned the bank's name in interviews. She didn't need to. Her silence was surgical, because in business and in life, respect is never optional. You never know who's walking through your doors, never know who you're speaking to, and sometimes the person you dismiss without thought might just be holding your next big break in the palm of their hand. And when that person walks away, you don't get a second chance. Camille never spoke about the incident publicly. No interviews, no social media posts, no public statement condemning the bank or calling out the teller. But months later, at a private leadership retreat attended by CEOs, startup founders, and aspiring entrepreneurs, Camille was asked a simple question. Can you share a moment that changed how you lead? She paused. Then, for the first time, she shared the story. She didn't name the bank. She didn't mention the city. She didn't describe the teller or even say what the deal had been worth. She just told the truth. How she had walked into a branch to open a trust account. How she had been met with disrespect. How her ID was tossed to the floor. How she chose to walk away. The room was silent, not out of shock, but because every person there understood the weight of what she was saying. Then Camille said something that stayed with everyone in the room long after she left. Some people think respect is earned through titles, but real power is quiet. It watches, it decides, and sometimes it walks away. She wasn't angry. She wasn't bitter. She wasn't trying to prove a point. She was simply showing how power moves when it's rooted in self-respect. Her story didn't make headlines, but it rippled through boardrooms, mentorship circles, and investment communities like wildfire. Not because she retaliated, but because she didn't have to. She chose not to demand validation or fight for dignity that should have been hers to begin with. She didn't lower herself to make a scene. She didn't let her ego write the next chapter. Instead, she used the one currency more powerful than money: influence. The kind of influence that makes people ask questions behind closed doors. That makes companies reevaluate their frontline training. That makes leaders reflect on how they treat every individual, regardless of what they wear, how they look, or where they're standing. For every woman, every person of color, every underestimated soul watching this. Camille's story is a reminder. You don't have to raise your voice to make noise. You don't have to clap back to make impact. You don't have to explain your worth to anyone who refuses to see it. Because real power doesn't need an audience. It walks in quietly. It listens. It observes. And when disrespected, it doesn't shout. It simply leaves. And when it leaves, it takes billions, opportunities, partnerships, and peace of mind with it. Camille's legacy wasn't built in that bank branch, but that moment added to it. A silent, dignified decision that became a powerful lesson in leadership, self-worth, and the invisible strength of those who choose grace over ego and boundaries over approval. If you found this story powerful, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more stories that inspire, provoke thought, and challenge the status quo. Let your silence speak volumes, just like Camille's did.